how do I, survive in this work, and what does it look like for me to thrive? And this work in this moment with Windcall actually gave me a lot of opportunity to think about that, but also just an opportunity to like reground myself in nature and reground myself with people, others who were experiencing the same sort of hangups and barriers that organizing work and movement work often provides. So, I'm really proud and really excited to have been able to do Windcall and been able to do it, with the Black cohort of great movement leaders around this country, and then being able to talk to y'all today about with other great movement leaders about the importance of sustainability and resiliency. And so, before we talk about more what that means to us and what that means to you, I want to pass it to Kelly, who will talk about the anniversary celebrations, and this being Windcall's 30th year.
Thanks so much, Brandon. And yes, looking forward to the conversation. And so I just want to provide a little grounding for the folks on the call, in addition to what Viviana said about the 30th anniversary, we have a video we're going to show in a few minutes. That's a way that people can help kind of spread the word about Windcall, both so people know about it and can apply, and also so we can keep this program going. We have a 30th anniversary committee of alums who are helping raise money for Windcall so we can continue to provide the kinds of grounding events that Brandon spoke to, and to expand them. So my name is Kelly Weigel. I got to go to the Olympic Peninsula in 2017 after having served for 15 years as the executive director of Western State Center based here in Portland, Oregon. And Western State Center is a community organizing, movement building hub here in the West. And I didn't realize until I went to Windcall just how tired I was from having served for ED for 7 years, not 15. I played different roles through the organization. But that reconnection with nature that Brandon spoke to just helped to remind me that even though it's the passion for working for our communities that often keeps us going, it's the planet that we're working for as well. I remember standing on the deck under a starry sky and a full moon, and you could see the water, and hearing a sea lion swimming. You could hear it swimming and breathing. And just that moment of realizing the interconnectedness of all of the world that we are in and the necessity of the work that we do really helped to recharge me and reground me to continue to do the work for social justice that is still so needed. So I'm very excited to hear from Viviana and from Vivian and from Caitlin about their reflections and experiences, and in particular for Black resiliency in our movement. So 2 quick things. If you are an alum and you are interested in helping, reach out to other alums, because as Viviana said, we want to make Windcall a life journey experience, not just a once in a lifetime experience. I'd be happy to tell you more about our committee and our ambassador program. I will post my email, and I'm happy to connect you to those activities. And the second thing is consider making a donation. Tomorrow is Giving Tuesday. It doesn't have to be tomorrow. It could be any day, really. And the video will help connect you both to share the news about that and to make that donation. So we'll post the link to Windcall's giving site as well as the video itself. And then, yeah, the work to, we have a goal of raising $50,000 in this kind of grassroots fashion from alums, and we'll be doing that in January. So no worries for your end of year fundraising efforts. We'll start new in 2020. And I think I did everything I was supposed to do, Viviana. So I will say thank you so much and turn this back over to, no, we're going to watch the video. So Eric will cue up the video. It's about 7 minutes, and then we'll move on to hearing from our amazing panelists. Thanks.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you. Great to have alumni joining us for all of this. And so I'm going to be sharing a video that we just created that highlights the experience of a couple of other alumni.
The spiritual and artistic and emotional energy that's here is really, really amazing. And it's definitely part of what we are experiencing here, what I've been experiencing. Actually having unstructured time, I think we were all a little bit intimidated by that. Oh, there's no schedule. Oh, there's no requirements. No, there aren't, except that you find your way.
Windcall is 30 years old, and we have been providing month-long sabbaticals for organizers from all over the country. And we are looking and inviting you to reflect on the day as to how do we heal from trauma and move towards embracing liberation.
I'm the founder of an organization called Legal Services for Prisoners with Children. And I really believe that a lot of us come to this work because of our own direct experience. 6 of my siblings are in recovery from serious drug and alcohol use, and 3 of my brothers have done time. I have at times questioned whether choosing to work in progressive, nonprofit, public interest work was the right path for me. And I do believe that it is. But I do see that many of my colleagues and friends are challenged now. It doesn't matter what work you're doing in social justice. It tears your heart out every day. I have been in this work for 40 years. I really need the opportunity to catch my breath.
Seems to be having.
Thank you, Water, for the reflection you give when we look to you.
I believe deeply in solidarity and standing up and putting my body behind my beliefs and my labor behind my beliefs. I grew up in a community that had a power plant, that had an oil depot, no investment in our schools or our community. And still manages to be beautiful and have so much grace. I think in the last couple of years, it's just become really clear to me that I have limits and that my body's actually been breaking down and my spirit is tired. I have been so scared that I have nothing left to give. So this retreat and Windcall is so timely because I've been deeply feeling the edges of that and knowing that I need to shift and evolve so that I can stay in this work.
I'm going to stop the video for a minute and see if we can buffer and catch up. Looks like it's having a hard time buffering.
It's a pretty radical departure from leading thousands of workers and campaigning against corporate America and doing civil disobedience on a mass scale. And now we cook for people and scrub toilets. And, it's the Windcall residents are exactly the kind of people we had in mind when we made the shift.
Powerful, I bet. They're peppery. Did you taste them? Here, their whole day revolves around caring for themselves inside out.
For me, a lot of it's been looking back on 40 years of the work and trying to get a clearer picture about what it means for me as a progressive, a radical white woman who's committed to racial justice. What does that mean in terms of my usefulness to the movement? Actually having people say that they're happy to support me in doing this has meant a tremendous amount. So, yeah.
I don't think anything prepared me for the level of guilt I have felt being here. It is incredible how stopping feels like failure.
Let it buffer a little bit more.
How saying I have limits feels like failure. One of the scariest things about being here is that there is nothing else to fix but me. What I remember feeling in that retreat was, how do I actually learn to just be who I am? Outside of obligations, outside of the shoulds, outside of everybody else's dreams, and to meet myself in a pretty bare state. I think the Windcall residency really provided the space where I could completely drop into what a different life looked like. I'm starting to become more clear on what my mission and sense of purpose is. And I think it's something around voice and authenticity. I'd love to be able to work with women and girls of color on what are the things that come from their experience, from their bodies, from their loves, from their lives, that actually advance justice.
As a white person of conscience committed to racial justice, I spent many years as an ED of an organization. When I left the organization I founded, I passed the baton to two formerly incarcerated and found myself exploring the role that I felt like I needed to play in the world, in the community, and what I could do. For me, Windcall was a bridge between two really important movements, from the really hardcore fighting the monster of the prison system into the transformative nature of restorative justice. It was an irreplaceable opportunity to stop and to consider my career, my work, the loved ones in my life, and where I was going next.
There is a difference actually in the way people lead and carry themselves after Windcall. I do believe that. And I don't think a lot of people know how many people are Windcall people.
Thank you all. So now Brandon and Vivian and Caitlin will share of their experiences.
Sorry, I'm on mute. Thank you so much for that. So I want to introduce some other Windcall panelists who are alumni from the program. So first, let me introduce Caitlin Johnson, founder of Black Roots Alliance. She was a Windcall alum from 2016. Also, I want to introduce Viviana Anderson, founder of Every Black Girl Inc., who is a Windcall panelist from 2017. And so, let me just introduce the panelists um, and just have them, kind of talk about like their, what was their personal organizational impact of doing Windcall, and what it meant to them. So, first, Caitlin.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me on the panel today. So I went to Windcall in 2016. It was fall. It was right after I had been a delegate to the Democratic National Convention and right before the election in 2016 of November. So it really came at a point in my career and in my life where I think there was a cultural shift happening and a lot of moments to really required me to reflect on my values, reflect on why I was doing the work, reflect on what I needed as a directly impacted Black woman to continue in the work and to continue to live out my values. And so for me, the personal impact for Windcall was really an opportunity for me to unravel a little bit in an environment that was actually really safe and supported. I actually broke my foot while I was there, so that was an adventure as well. But really being able to allow myself to be messy, to be vulnerable, to be at a place where I needed the support and I needed the time to really reflect on what I was doing with my life. And so, one of the things that I really, came out of that experience is recognizing that, the person, we all talk about the personal is political and the political is personal, but I really didn't have a really good gauge on what that meant to me at that point of my life, given kind of the shifts that I was having in the movement, shifts that I was having in my personal life. And I realized that, for me, this work is a fight for my own liberation, as well as for the liberation of the collective, and realizing in order for me to be good for the movement, I had to love myself first, love Black people, and love humanity. And Windcall gave me an opportunity to really have that moment to define what that love meant to me. There was a whole lot of unlearning that had to take place. I was at the residency in Washington State, and it was just being surrounded by nature, being super far from civilization in a lot of ways. We were really, really isolated. But it was so necessary for me to just scale back to zero and kind of decide with intention what I wanted to rebuild and create a path for myself that allowed me to practice living in the world that I was fighting for, and really practice my values of self-care that I often encourage others to espouse. And so the Black Roots Alliance actually had a lot of seeds that were planted during the Windcall time. And our work now is really centered on the safety and liberation of all Black people while promoting Black leadership in order to heal our communities and fundamentally transform society. So for me, Windcall was really transformational and helped me redirect my energies in a way that I could be more whole and show up in a better space to the movement.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Caitlin. So next, Viviana, if you want to talk about, what the Windcall experience meant to you, and what are some, personal organizational impacts that you got from coming out of Windcall in 2017.
So I'm gonna ask, are you talking to Viviana or are you talking to Vivienne?
I'm so sorry, Vivienne.
Yeah, praise God.
Yes. extra A appeared out of nowhere.
No, it actually is so prevalent because that's been my story, right? I think one of the things that happened in my Windcall experience is that I'm very good at like, oh, well, they said Viviana, but they meant Vivian. So, in part of my personal experience at Windcall, Vivian just didn't exist. Vivian like played her role. Vivian jumped in and was like, oh, these people are going through something. Let me be with them. And I didn't have, this is going to sound so strange to all the people that's listening. I realized like my personal and my organizational, they don't exist in separate forms, right? And so for me, so my name is Vivian Anderson, and I am recently married, and my husband gets mad because his name is Patterson and I haven't changed my name. But what happened for me was that I couldn't even understand, like, how am I getting this? Like, why are people telling me this is what I need? This is what ain't nothing wrong. Everything is good. I'm just moving. Why y'all think I need a like time and all this stuff? Because I was just starting an organization and I'm like, I know how to do grouse work. I'm like a foot soldier, put it on the ground. And so what the wind call experience gave me was I learned how to see me and acknowledge me while I am like supporting others, if that makes any sense. I really was like, oh, okay, ooh, this is unique. I call my experience, and we'll probably talk about this later. I felt like it was the real world. Put 7 people in the room, you put 4 people in the room who living their life, doing what they do, and then like what really shows up. And I'm gonna continue to show up. But what it gave me was I learned how to fight for me. So any other time, I wouldn't even correct it that you call me Viviana. But now I get to say, no, my name is Vivian. Viviana is my twin spirit. I love her for life, but I'm Vivian. And that's what the experience gave me, because we had 4 people of color there who lived some different experiences. We were coming from different spaces. And I kept showing up for folks. And I was like, well, they need this and I can see it. They're hurting, they're doing that, because we got to be real true about when we talk about sabbatical, there's trauma that's living. And I'm somebody who can recognize trauma. So I'm in a space where people are experiencing trauma. But there was one moment, there was just like certain spaces where I was just like, oh, but what about me? And I kept reaching out saying, I don't understand what's going on. What are we supposed to be doing here? And it was like, okay, so it was a unique experience. I think my experience, and I don't know about the other 3 people who were with me, the way I hear people talk about Windcall, my experience was really unique and different, but so needed in my life to like leave and say, if I'm gonna stand for Black women and girls, they will always own their space no matter where they are. And that's what it gave me. And maybe I didn't have all the like, oh, this transformational this and that, or oh, I did this and that. But what it did was like grounded me in a way which told me I was okay and who I am in this world is okay. And that may sound like off, and I have to be transparent. Today was a really hard day for me, but I was committed to being here. And that's part of it, right? Like, I get to show up and like, it was a tough day. And I still get to say, I can have that because I will learn from Windcall. And I'm sorry. That's all.
Vivian, thank you so much for that. I appreciate just being able to give that testimony and get that witness. I think like the thing I took away from my Windcall experience, that's connected to both you and Caitlin's, is just, there's time from myself. And if I don't pour into myself, then there won't be me left to even be in this movement. And I think so often, like, we as leaders and we as organizers just forget that, because we're jumping into action, we're jumping into action, we're jumping into the movement, we're trying to fight, we're trying to create change, and we often, we're trying to help every single person on organize every single person, and we're forgetting about us, the person who's still standing there. So, Vivian, thank you so much for just being able to give that. I see you, we see you, and that'll never happen again where I call you Viviana. So next, I want to just ask a couple quick questions of folks. That's just kind of ties this experience to to the overall moment that we're in the world. So I just want to ask if what, if we're thinking about 2020, we know that this is going to be a hell of a year, both in terms of our movements, in terms of our organizations, in terms of like the repeated onslaught that we're going to get, from all directions. And that's not even talking about just the national press and the noise that's going to be happening. So, I want to just ask both of y'all, Caitlin and Vivian, like what will be needed in 2020 to handle, the sort of electoral work and movement work, just on top of the current work that we're doing. And then, what suggestions do you have for organizers to focus on addressing sustainability, in this moment? And then, and especially for funders to support this type of work.
I think part of it is something that I really actually embraced at Windcall, was being intentional about planning for your own resiliency practices. Calendars and budgets are tangible representations of how we value our most precious commodity, which is our time. And if we are not being intentional about planning to take time to take care of ourselves, to recharge our own batteries, to even reflect, even if it's just something that is a 1 week thing. There's so much value in being able to take a step back from external commitments and reaffirm the commitment to yourself, because in the long run, that's the commitment that will get you through to the future that we're all fighting for. And so, coming up into 2020, one thing that I'm noticing in a lot of the members of the Black Roots Alliance, a lot of our colleagues, is the impact of what being called a Black identity extremist actually does to people, and recognizing that this generation has learned from previous movements and how government surveillance, COINTELPRO, all of that really does impact real life. And being able to hold our communities in that space and create opportunities for us to heal, and also for us to protect ourselves. And engaging in a space like Windcall provides that conduit for us to be able to connect to our truest source, what really motivates us to do the work. And because from my experience, the relationships that you build through the residency also really help carry you through into a whole host of different life experiences that help keep building you up, and building towards a stronger, more sustainable experience of doing movement work. And as for advice or suggestions for funders, I would go back to being intentional about where our values really lie. We are in this for the people. We are in this for justice, and recognizing that healing is a type of justice that is necessary in order for us to create the change that we want to be in the world. And I think, I guess the last thing would be kind of recognizing 2020, there's so much going on and a lot of conversations happening. And just like in 2016, it really could shift our paradigms of how we do movement work, how we do community organizing, how we engage in public policy. And I think that those paradigm shifts are necessary because we have to recognize that there are certain parts of the world that there's certain communities within our nation that need deep healing. And being able to facilitate that is an important step in ensuring justice for all.
You want me to start? Okay.
Yes.
So for me, I think, and thank you for speaking about healing justice, because I think part of my Windcall experience was like, oh, I got so caught up in this word self-care, right? But I think healing justice was part of my experience at Windcall. And when we talk about this new space, for me, I'm just speaking for me, this is not a new space. I'm a little older, so I've lived through Reagan, Carter. I lived through some folks, right? So this 2016, when it happened, did it hurt my heart? Absolutely, because I was like, oh, dang, I thought we was different, but we not. But it didn't shift so many things for me. What did happen was like, I had to keep remembering that I was so involved with what's happening locally that we're so putting on this national. And so how can I be direct? Because I'm one of those folks, I'm going to keep telling everybody, I was one of those folks that's like, I'm still wondering how I got here, how God felt me worthy enough to even be in a space where I could be with people in this way, right? And so what I mean by that is like, when I was in my Windcall experience, folks were really having some like real reactions, like some reactions that I wasn't having, because I was like, listen, we gonna move regardless. But they were really in reaction. They were living through trauma, and self-care and healing are two different spaces. So for me, I got to learn how to take what happened in Windcall for me, I was able to bring it back home. Because let me also say that I've been doing work in Columbia, South Carolina. So 4 years ago, when I was headed off to Windcall, we had just primary state. Here we are 4 years later, primary state, where everybody is like, oh, they're coming, they're talking to us, but ain't nobody being with us. And what Windcall did was like, I actually get to own and be okay with it. I get to keep being with people. Different from like, oh, we want you to just go vote on this national stage. There are local things that's happening. My word, there are women and girls hurting every day. And I'm telling you, some of my stuff was like, oh, people keep asking me how I feel about this election and Trump being in office. And I know we don't like to say his name, but him being in office, I was like, well, I'm living in a place where it ain't changed. I'm talking about 20% of slave ships landed here. I'm talking about stuff all the time, not just every 4 years. It's happening all the time. And then when I went into Windcall, and I was like, oh, I'm about to have a sabbatical. I ain't never heard what that was, but okay. And all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, I got some folks who are on the ground working real hard, and they're in trauma. And for me, what I thought I was supposed to have went to be with how do I work with folks to heal. And that's some of the stuff, as we talk about Windcall, my experience taught me that you can actually be seen all the time, Vivian, and acknowledge that you are a healer. And it doesn't mean that you're not taking care of yourself too. Because I found that time too, but I think Windcall, I think our year, I think I'm that like, we always have that one class. I'm that class. That is like, when I saw that video, I do believe we contributed to that young girl singing that she did. I even watched how they were interacting with each other, different experience from what I had. And so I don't know if I'm answering the question, but when I think about 2020 for me is like, how do we keep being with people so healing can keep taking place? Because life gonna keep life and people gonna keep people in. But how do we keep having people see themselves in a way where they see themselves as powerful no matter who's in the White House? What are we doing locally? And that's what I grew up around. Like, What are we doing locally? And I came back so strong. I felt so refreshed. At first, I had an attitude because I was like, wait a minute, this ain't, Then I was like, stop. This is exactly what you want to do with people. They taught me how to be with people more. So I'm so grateful for my experience. When you're open to whatever the experience is supposed to be, because I think that was the piece for me. It can't be prescribed. We can look at all this and say, it's going to be this, it's going to be that. Once I let go of, it's supposed to be a sabbatical, you're supposed to do this, you're supposed to do that. And I was open to what's supposed to be on the other side. It changed everything for me. And I love my experience. Didn't know how to appreciate it then, but I love it so much now.
Thank you for that, Vivian. So, like, I think the only thing I would add to any of that that you and Caitlin said is that, you know, people got to be able to get their material needs met during this time. We can't just drop everything for, you know, for campaigns and candidates, you know, because for Black communities, for brown communities, you know, we've been, you know, beat up and abused by these systems at large. And, you know, it's not going to do us any good to just tell, you know, folks to go vote for a particular candidate if we aren't talking about like how they see themselves as humans and how they see themselves as people. So like what we're trying to do here at Detroit Action here in Michigan is really just center, you know, healing, center resistance, resilience, center moments where we can stop and just take a break. Because the funder world is just, you know, so often just situated with go doors and metrics and, you know, these transactions, and not centered around the idea of like how we think about our canvassers, our organizers, our voters as people. And so we just got to be able to center our folks as people and really create more time to do that. So like one of the things that we're trying to do in our conversations with electoral funders and with all of the, you know, folks who are trying to give us money for the election this upcoming year is really just be really intentional about goals, you know, tossing away metrics that don't matter, but then B, you know, making sure that we have time and put money in our budgets to actually do things that bring joy and not just are focused on outputs. So that's like my sort of like take on 2020. I want to ask folks. We also got one question that I want to just read that comes out of the panel from Emily. That says, you know, everyone has a different experience at Windcall. It's so hard to describe, especially the funders. Can any of you share what makes it different and necessary? It's like magic sauce compared to other programs. And you know, Kaylin and Vivian, which I want to just talk about like what makes this different and like, you know, how do we describe like how is Windcall different than the other programs that exist in this sort of leadership ecosystem?
Yeah, you know, I think no one knows how to heal you better than you know how to heal yourself, and Windcall gives you the opportunity to do that. I think you know, I've been a part of some other leadership programs that are absolutely amazing, and have also shape my life and expand my consciousness. But I think the unique part of Windcall is that it is self-guided. It is an opportunity where no one is holding you to any other expectation. And like the person in the video had said, there's nothing to fix but herself. There's nothing to fix but yourself. And Windcall is built around that premise that that one, maybe there's actually nothing to fix in yourself. You just need to breathe. You just need to learn how to love yourself more, to just be who you want to be. Because it's also like, you know, I talked a lot about, you know, all of the resiliency and all the heady self-care stuff, but it was also just fun. Like it was just fun to go kayaking. It was fun to be in nature. And, you know, Windcall provides an opportunity for both deep self-healing, but also just play. And as adults, we don't play enough. And so I think that also gives Windcall an additional magic to their sauce.
Yeah, I think for me, because I do leadership development with adults, right? I do that work. But for me, what Windcall gave me was like, and I'm going to keep going back to, I really saw the both and. there were moments where I was deep into how I'm in the world every day, how I'm supporting people through their trauma, how I'm doing. But the fact that I was just like, oh, this little black girl here in this beautiful home, and I got this white man cooking meals for me. I'm being totally transparent. I was like, yes to the gods. That's what I'm talking about. You asking me what I need and you gonna provide it for me? Yes to the gods. Didn't mean that I still didn't have to be with some folks who may have had, like, I came from my space was different from what they came from. And so where they may have been triggered or interrupted by this white man in this home cooking for us, I was like, listen, ain't this what we supposed to be doing? And it wasn't like a race conversation. It really was like, oh my God, who would have ever thought it? And I don't have to think about nothing. Okay, I don't even like arts and crafts. Let me tell y'all something about Vivian. She don't really do all that arts and crafty stuff. Every day I was like, teach me how to do this. Teach me. Because every time I started stitching and sewing, I felt like I was rebuilding something, a part of me that I didn't even know about, which I learned to love. And so I think part of the Windcall experience is like, Caitlin kept saying, no matter, even though they say it ain't scripted, we go with, well, I went in and said, nope, they got some agenda for us. It's like what, on those cruise ships, they say it's optional, but you in the back of your hand said, oh, they made me gotta do it. But it really was optional. And you really design it for you. And it was the first time I was forced. I was really forced. I had to step back a lot of times and say, you gonna be for you or not. And I was forced to say, I don't care what they say, here's some suggestions. You can actually go off and ain't nobody gonna be upset about it. And that freedom felt better than anything I felt in such a long time. Because I really, really, I felt it in my core, like, no, they're really saying like, what do you wanna do? And I hadn't asked myself that question in such a long time.
Thank you. And I would say, so I what I did during the time was sleep. We we had a lot of free time, and I slept. I read. I went to yoga, but I also got a chance to do things that I would never do in Detroit. So I went hiking. I went to all of the national monuments that are in New Mexico with our hosts Leslie and Mitch, and they were just able to, in the car rides, we were able just to talk about life and organizing, not in strategy or in funder metrics, but like why we do this stuff and like why it matters, and how we see ourselves in the movement. And Leslie and Mitch, are the folks who hosted us in New Mexico, and they're who you see in the video. And they talk about seeing themselves in the movement just in a different perspective, not just being organizers anymore, but actually like caring for folks when they want to come rest. And it was just good to get that perspective and remind me of why I want to do this work. And it was good to just like hike, which is a thing I never did before, or even go. We went to the Bosque del Apache, which is a national park in New Mexico, and we had to go watch cranes, just the crane festival. So things like that were dope, and they were also just allowed me to like not think about putting out fires, not thinking about putting out emergencies or having to think about strategy. Just really being able to turn off. I mean, and I think there is the temptation of like answering emails or text messages, and I had to do that sometimes because I'm the director, and there were things that like decisions were made for me. But like one of the key lessons that I took away from just looking at my messages and looking at my email less was just to trust in my team more, and just like to build up the sort of like structures and the mechanisms so that way folks wouldn't need me as much and I can like rely on myself. So that was like the one big piece I took away from my time um, in Windcall and in New Mexico, is just being able to build structures and being able to build time for myself. So thank you, Caitlin and Vivian. I want to pass the mic over to Eric, who's going to talk about the next step of the agenda, and we'll ask if there are, and we'll also introduce himself. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brandon, and Caitlin and Vivian, so far for a great discussion and sharing your experience. I believe Brandon already asked one of the questions, but please feel free to, if there's any questions that are popping up, feel free to put them on the chat or the Q&A, and we'll be happy to ask the questions to the panelists. And then really quickly, myself, I am an alum with Windcall. I was able to go to the same site as Caitlin and Vivian at Olympic Peninsula in 2016. And personally, it had a major impact on me, where coming back, it completely transformed the way that I even look or understand and my relationship with the organizing work. And even helping with our base, found a new organization, still a 501c3, but completely structured differently from inside, and the way that we approach the work, and even with foundations and funding, just cutting ties with things that we're creating the unnecessary pressure on us. We already have that pressure with the work and the communities that we're trying to uplift and organize. So if there's anybody else, just with Vivian and Caitlin, how often did you end up checking your emails and receiving texts? I know it's pretty tough out there to get that reception.
Yeah, it was rare because there wasn't really reliable reception and there was no internet, so emails didn't really happen. I did check text sometimes, but like Brandon said, it was more of a mindful usage of my phone. So when text came through, I felt this space like, okay, the person who sends me this text knows where I'm at, so they know that I might not respond. And being able to take the ownership of like, I actually don't have to respond to this. And it helped me kind of refine what was really an urgent thing versus what was something that was really somebody else needed to step into their own leadership potential, versus like, man, actually this is not relevant at all. And being able to just remind myself of why I'm there. Because the texts were so sporadic, it would be like I would get a message and it'd be like 100 messages at once, because that's when the signal happened to open up. And I didn't check them all. And that was really beautiful. And I carry that with me now. Like there are times where like I feel like I've been able to detox from technology to a certain extent, because of having to spend those 3 weeks without any reliable technology. I check my emails less and still manage to get things done. I check my texts less and still manage to get things done. And realizing like the false attachment we have to these smart devices can be really, challenging and harmful in some ways. At least it was for me. I felt very overly connected to my phone. And now it is really just another tool that I can use, that I can pick up, I can put down, because the real movement work is really in relationship, and that can happen with technology.
How about you?
Yeah, I think for me, what happened was, I keep talking about the both and. It really challenged me to realize who the work I do and how much I am a part of the work. So I was one that was like, hey, why y'all checking emails? Why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? And it challenged me to say, don't check yours, because I'm telling these folks, you get to have relaxation, you get to have this, and you get to have that. But I didn't realize how much I was really talking to myself. And so for me, I was so adamant about like, it don't matter that we don't have this. Y'all gonna be okay. We gonna be okay. Okay, let's just be together. Let's just talk. And so for me, some of the technology stuff it's even. So today I have somebody who does that, like, oh, we gonna do this social media. I'm not so technology. Like, I am so like committed and forever grateful, because if Windcall didn't give me anything, it reminded me that human contact is more important than any other contact I'm going to have in this world. So I continue to door knock. I continue to be like, I'm going to roll up on you. I'm going to stop. When you say you want me here, I'm going to be here. And so I think it made it more, because I do think technology took us a lot of ways away from the personal, and being where somebody then picked me up from airport telling me how to be with wolves and like bears. I was like, excuse me, you joking? I'm being punked. Oh, you for real, for real. So we're going to have to really be together. So what does it look like to really be together and be with folks, and then have folks really hear, saying, here's what I'm scared of. Here's what I'm going through. And so I think for me, it actually was like, thank you, because it's something that I live with today. Everybody tells me I'm not technology. I'm not all that. If I want to talk to you, I'll roll up on you before I text you. And people are always like, you'll never know when she coming. Because if I really need something, when I couldn't have nothing else, only had the four of us in that space, and we had to be for each other. And so what would that look like on a larger scale? And that's how I've been moving since I left Windcall. Like, what would it look like if we only had to count on us? If we only had to count on us, what would that look like? And that moves me a lot.
Thank you so much. Hearing you both speak about that experience gives me flashbacks, and literally how you physically feel spending a few days without that phone right next to you. I felt that, and when you don't have that feeling of that technology next to you, because it does change that energy, you now switch to that energy with the other human beings there with you, and nature all around you. And so for me, I literally felt that physically, so I have that respect for the phone, as far as respecting that, whoa, you do give out energy and you can affect me, mentally, physically, spiritually. And so the need to create that balance. And something for folks who might have not taken a residency and who are listening, those 21 days, they're very specific and important because it allows our body to get used to something new, those 21 days of repeating something. And so 21 days of having that sort of different relationship with technology can really help, spark something in us. Let's see here. There's a lot of questions now coming in. I just want to make sure I get them in order. Loved how Brandon described identifying goals that bring joy to the team. Other ideas or suggestions on how to support staff in a more routine basis? And appreciate Caitlin's suggestions on calendars and budgets too.
So the question is suggestions to help support staff.
Yeah, how to kind of make it more sort of on a normal basis with staff, how to kind of introduce this culture to the organization.
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the things that I think I learned from this experience is restructuring our agreements with staff. There is an those of us who have a critique of capitalism recognize that we are more than what we produce, and being able to shift agreements that we have with staff about how they engage in attendance, how they engage in, you only have 10 sick days a year, and if you're sick on the 11th day, you have to come into work sick. Like, that's not real. And that's actually, for me, I felt like that was really inhumane, because if you're sick, you're sick, and if you need to take some space, you need to take some space. But we had to really, I had to renegotiate those agreements. And that's something that, is important for us here at the Black Roots Alliance, is just like, you have to be a whole person and start from that space, and allow our staff to be whole. And so I think I see my role as helping staff own that they are the architects of their own experience, and that we value self-care at this organization. So we start from there, and we don't start with any sort of punitive approach to what happens to you if you get sick. Like, it's a conversation, it's a relationship, and it's in a lot of ways crafted in real time, because each person's different. Of course there's standard, of course there's things that have to be formalized in some ways. But I think it's really important to plan for self-care, plan for opportunities to reflect, and weave that into everything that you do.
How about you, Vivian? Your organization.
I think some of my experience is just a little different because I am the staff, right? And so I have one person who does communication for me, who's like 5 hours a week, does the social media. But I think one of the things that's happened for me is that I'm okay with moving as slow as I'm moving, because before I become a non-industrial complex, I'm going to be human and people generated, right? And so a lot of folks volunteer to support me in the work we're doing. And, I'm like, oh, we want to talk about equity around this and self-care and this and this and this and that. Before I bring anybody on, I want to make sure they have bought into it, especially because our goal is to have 50% of our organization called Every Black Girl. That means 50% of the decision making should be coming from Black girls. And so what organization do I set up for them? And they get to decide it. So it taught me that I don't have to move so fast. So right now I'm like, yeah, it's just me, but I'm okay. We're still serving, we're still creating programming, but we get to create an organizational structure from the folks who are like gonna be the decision makers and those most impacted. And I realize it includes me. So that means moving slow works for me right now. And so it's been great because I left and I've taken kids out of the country. I've been able to take adults on some weekend retreats where you get to actually go through healing because one of the things I realized is we all come through this work attached to it for a specific reason. And sometimes we need our whole own healing. And so we dive in and then we become perpetrators of our own harm, right? And so I was able to take my experience and say, nope, I'm going to stop. I'm going to work with these folks. I'm going to give what I didn't have until a Windcall and give them that same kind of space to say, what is it that's really sitting there? And why did you want to come into this work? What are you doing in this work? So I can actually peel that away where it's not like you're hiding in the work. You're actually standing in the work and get to own yourself. And you could tell somebody, my name is Vivian, not Viviana. No shade, Brandon, but that's part of it though, right? No, it really is part of it, because if I'm not even allowing myself to be seen as Vivian, what am I doing in this work? And that's the work that I've been doing. And Windcall called me forward in that. I didn't know that. I thought I was just going to lap up, but they called me forward in a way. So I'm so forever grateful, because I could easily been like, oh, it was jacked up, it was this. But when I sat and I actually had time to reflect, I said, thank you, God. I saw what you were teaching me.
Thank you so much. And Call offers coaching for our our residents after they return back. For my experience, it coming back, it's just everything tastes different, seems different. It's so vibrant, the energies, and so some of us do need that guidance just to kind of get focused on what our next goals are. Especially after having such an experience. Both of you kind of answered this next question, but I wanted to see if there's anything else you would want to add, and it's coming from one of our coaches. I've coached several Windcall alums when they return, and they often wonder if and how to share their experience with their staff so that they understand the changes alums are trying to make for themselves and in the organization. Have you shared some of your experience or intentions with your coworkers? How did that go?
Yeah, I think I learned. I think that's a really intense question, because the Windcall experience for me was just so deeply personal, and a lot of what I wanted to change really unfolded after Windcall, and kind of, reflecting on the journals that I kept there, reflecting on some of the things that I was working on there. It was a process of unfoldment that took me into the next couple years, actually. So I think I having gone through that, and actually having transitioned from the organization that I was with when I was at Windcall, I think there's definitely some value in sharing experience and sharing intentions with coworkers, with staff, but also allowing myself to keep things personal, because some things were just, that wasn't the dynamic that I really could have presented at the time. And I was still figuring it out. Like, I think, there isn't, for me, there wasn't an expectation that, okay, I'd be gone for 21 days and my whole life would be like, I'd figure it all out. But it was really, it was the beginning. It wasn't necessarily the end at all. I mean, there's still some things that I'm working through now that really, like, actually recently I had put my Windcall journal away, and I pulled it back out when we were talking about this webinar. And it was so awesome for me to see how many things unfolded that I had visioned for at Windcall, and that I just like put in the back of my mind. And then here I am now, several years later, and seeing, oh, this was really in my soul, and being able to see those things expand after Windcall. I don't think I could have articulated them very well to anyone else other than me. So to answer the question, I shared some of my experiences. I think I just had to, the best example was just me living my life, and recognizing that everyone is going to have a different experience with Windcall, and everyone's staff is going to be different. Everyone's coworkers are going to be different. And I think it's whatever the individual feels they can share, they should share, but there's no shame if they don't share anything.
How about you, Vivian?
Yeah, I think one of the things for me was like, I came back, and like I said, it's just me, like the staff is me, right? But for other folks who are like executive directors or senior program directors in other organizations, I was able to be with them in a way that they were with their staff in a different way. They moved in their organizations in a different way. It was like, oh, what do you mean? Oh, okay, so maybe a board meeting or a staff retreat can look like A, B, or C. Now, it wasn't a full, we're going away for 3 weeks, but it was like a different way to say, oh, well, let's talk about when a staff person says they need moments. And right, I was able to go back and be with different leaders and organizations here in South Carolina, as well as create those spaces for leaders of organizations, which I'm really grateful for. I think for me personally, it's always a reminder that like I get to, it may seem small, it may seem insignificant to other people, but like, when do I get to keep saying, no, I matter in this conversation. I know I'm coming in to support and help, but I'm doing this because I know what I went through, and I don't want anybody else to go through that, but I don't have to keep erasing myself. So I'm always with the both and the both and the both and how do we make them both work? And I saw somebody talk about family. I think one of the things that was so important for me is that I left Windcall and proposed to my husband. And when I tell you, not only did we get married 4 months later, like I left Windcall, proposed in July, got married in November. He has been such a supporter of like, what does it mean? And now we're in a full conversation, and this may not make sense to anybody. We're in a full conversation about him retiring from the city, because he's like, if I'm going to give my all to something, I want to give it to my family. I get to support my parents. I get to support you. I don't want to keep tiring myself like man in the fields every day. And he's like, but I never thought I had that option. But you keep showing up in a way that shows me like, maybe I do have some choice in how I move forward in my life and can still stand for my family and community. So once he realized he was so a part of every move I was making, it made it so much easier for him to be like, oh, you got to go away this weekend? Got it. Because I know it's for us. And so for that person who talked about family, oftentimes in this work, I think we often like, we got to fix it for everybody. But once he was included in how we work together to make it a like what does it mean for us to thrive together versus me telling him what thriving looks like, it shifted how we both move. So.
Thank you both. We have a question here, and we kind of slightly might have touched it, but from Jeanette, she's specifically talking about family. Any suggestions on how to prepare family for that time, those 21 days that we leave? Some of us have, different levels of caretaking responsibilities, but how was that experience, and any suggestions?
Yeah. So for me, Viviana might remember, I almost didn't go to Windcall because there was an issue with my dad. He was ill at the time and I didn't want to leave. And, excuse me. But I did anyway. We figured it out, and Windcall actually, preparing my family, like, I'm going to be gone for this time. Here, they had Viviana's number. Like, they had people who knew where I was. So if an emergency happened, they had a way to get a hold of me. But on the end of Windcall, because I had so much time to reflect on what I really valued, it transformed my relationships with my family. And my dad actually passed away last year. And it was from the time of Windcall to the time he passed away. Like, my dad and I always had an amazing relationship, but it helped me value my time with my family much more, having been gone from them for 3 weeks. So, I think preparing them for, like, I'm going to be gone, but I'm coming back. Here's how to get a hold of me. But also, like, preparing me for that time away from my family was I think far more important, because, like, they figured it out. Like, they were fine. But I was the one who was like, oh my gosh, like, I'm away. And it's something, like I mentioned, I broke my foot, and I remember taking a picture of it because I'm like, I want to show my mom how bad this looks. And she didn't get it until I got back. And it was just such a funny moment to really reflect on how important they were to me. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity to have had, time to do things more deeply. And it was just really valuable to have that opportunity.
Thank you so much, Caitlin, for sharing. How about you, Vivian?
Yeah, I think one of the things that happened was that I have family who are deep Southern roots, Bible Belt, all that stuff, who are like, wait a minute, I get to, like, center myself. It's one of those things where it really was, it's like sometimes people need an example, sometimes we don't, because for me, all I knew is that you go and you grind and you grind and you grind for everybody else. You'll figure yourself out. And I'm watching, like, my younger, like, my nieces and nephews. I'm watching, like, other young people in my life, not just family, but I'm watching young people say, no, I get to take time for me. And it's okay. And actually, the time I take for me will further us along. It is going to move us so much further. But if I'm not putting my air mask on, I actually can't help anybody else. And to have young people in my family learning that now, some of the choices and some of the relationships, and, like, when I tell you, it's ways where it's like, it's been like, I'm being transparent, where it's just like, well, no, I left the relationship because it was getting violent, but I thought I was supposed to stay because I was supposed to make it work out. And I'm like, oh, but it was like, no, but you taught us. I get to breathe too. And so I think Windcall gave me some, because I want to tell you, it was a couple days at Windcall was like, okay, who get the mask? Who get the mask? Because I'm about to lose it up in here. Who get the mask? Because my experience is probably a little different from a lot of folks. But it gave me that, oh, baby, you get to wear a mask. You actually get to put on your mask, and it's going to be okay. And so I think that the family piece is that once you wrap them into it versus saying, here's family, here's work, and I moved it all together and gave them what I learned and showed them, not just told them, but I showed them on my daily walk what I learned from it. It shifted how we start moving together as family.
Excellent. Thank you both so much. Viviana and Brandon, it seems like that's all the questions we have so far on the chat.
Yeah, this has been really great. Thank you so much for all of you to share so deeply. The experience of really finding oneself, it's so personal and so unquantifiable. And what keeps coming up for me, I was just sharing a little bit, is how spaciousness is so important, how we need to give ourselves the space to find ourselves. So thank you all for sharing so much of yourselves and sharing what your journey was like in finding yourselves. And I feel very, very grateful, just everyone else, to be able to be in this journey with you. And I want to continue this journey with you into the future. There's so much that we can, so much space that we can bring to people and into the movement. I'm really touched by everything that you have shared. Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful. Thank you.
Thank you all. We'll see each other again in the new year. We'll have other webinars in the series, and we'll be in touch regarding them.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.